Hey guys, Rollout here, and welcome to Robo Week. I've been pretty much completely carried away by this project I'm working on, and it means that almost everything I built this week is from Cardfight Vanguard. Based on the reactions from last episode, I'm happily surprised so many of you are fans of Vanguard already, so look forward to more of this sort of thing, because recently I've fallen head over heels back into the series. I've been playing the new mobile game constantly, I've been catching up on the show, and building all of my favorite units in LEGO basically every single day. It's a nostalgia trip, for sure. You can help support projects like this by checking out my Patreon. I post daily content, there's a Discord server, you can pledge as low as $1 a month, so definitely give it some consideration if you can, but you can also support Builder's Block by liking this video and sharing it with your friends. With that out of the way, who's ready for some dimensional justice? So I started the week with a very simple break from my current projects. I built this little scrap build. He's kind of a small minifigure scale android of some kind, using all of these handlebar pieces in his body. He's got a very obscure looking head. It uses this ski element and it gives him this like big visor thing on the front of his face. And yeah, it looks kind of weird, but there's something about it that I'm into, and I'm not sure if I'm crazy for that, but I really kind of like it. I like how unique it is. It's got quite a bit of articulation in the waist. The arms can go in and out. The legs can go forward and back. He's quite a dynamic character. Here it is next to a minifigure. So yeah, I know this can fit into sci-fi scenarios, I guess. Just a simple, small little thing. However, on the next day, I continued working on my Super Dimensional Robo project from a different angle. I thought about building a Kaiser and Kaiser combo. Once again, clinging onto the hypothetical dream that I could make a transforming Super Dimensional Robo from Cardfight Vanguard. Kaiser is much more simple than the larger Yuusha. Yuusha is comprised of 5 units. Kaiser is only comprised of 2. You have a smaller robot that combines with a very large vehicle to become like a super mode. And so I thought about building this, and I started by conceptualizing the head design. So on the left, you have the smaller Kaiser, and then on the right, you have the fully combined Kaiser. Because the thing is that even though it's a very simple combination, Kaiser's helmet just kind of folds around Kaiser's head from nowhere, and even if I were to make this transform, I don't think I could realistically do that without parts forming anyway. So at this point, the plan was that I would just replace the head, and then make everything else still combine. That was the thought, at least. Here it is from the back. They are built very, very similarly. You just have the more vanilla Kaiser head and the more decorated deluxe Kaiser head. Now, on the next day, I continued working on this project, but I decided that I wanted to go at it from a slightly smaller scale. I still really, really like this Kaiser head, but I wanted to do something much smaller for Kaiser because he has to sort of fold up into a box and fit inside Kaiser's chest. So I started building it much smaller, and I ended up actually completing a Kaiser. Now, by the time I finished this, having him fold up into a box wasn't a priority anymore. Like, you still can fold his legs onto his back, but I realized that almost the entirety of Kaiser is the vehicle that combines with this guy. he fits into Kaiser's chest, but then a chest plate covers him entirely and a helmet folds over his head. So in the Kaiser combination, you don't see one single bit of Kaiser. And so I no longer prioritize transforming this guy. Instead, my one last hope for making a transforming Dimensional Robo is to build a Kaiser grader, the vehicle this guy combines with, that self-sufficiently transforms into Kaiser. So I think that's still a possibility. We'll see. But for right now, I just have a standalone Kaiser, and I really like the way he turned out. I built him in this very stylized aesthetic. It's kind of super deformed, almost cute, but it's just got very pleasing proportions and a very pleasing balance between simplified details while still having, large enough features to have recognizable detail as well. Here it is compared to the card. You can see, not nearly as detailed as the character itself, but I still think it's fully recognizable. And again, it has kind of this cutesy aesthetic that I really enjoy. It's just got good proportions. It feels good in your hand. I really love the way this looks, and all of my Dimensional Robos going forward, I would like to build in this style. Here it is from the back. And when it comes to the backs of these characters, I have to do a lot of interpretation because, most of the cards are seen from the front, and you can kind of get glimpses of what's on their back, but not always. Often I'll have to refer to the anime, and these characters only show up very briefly in certain episodes, and often you don't even see them from the back in the TV show, but occasionally you'll catch a frame or two and you can infer using that. But it's very apparent that the animators of the show run into similar problems that I run into, where they simply don't know what the back of the character looks like because it's not displayed on the card, so they just make it up. And so I just make it up. I can clearly see he has some kind of booster pack with two binders on the side, and then like a central fin sticking off of it. That fin is not present on the animation stills, so clearly they missed that detail, but I wanted to kind of find a balance between what's in the show and what's on the card, and so I added that. It's very possible, I suppose, that this is what folds up into the head of Kaiser, but I don't see a whole lot of evidence for that. There's a lot of details on this backpack piece that just don't translate over. Like maybe this fin splits in half and becomes Kaiser's V fin, but I just can't be sure. So instead, I build what I see, and it's as good as I can get it, I suppose. I'm working with what I've got. On the next day, I made some small yet significant changes to this design. When I'm working on, small daily projects, it might seem like I get more work done because I put more pieces together. When I'm working on a project like this that I'm a little bit more passionate about, I still spend the same amount of time each day on it. There's just a lot more deliberation. There's a lot more thought put into the changes I made. And so while it looks like only a few things have changed here, there was still, like I said, a lot of work put into it. And that's just how these larger projects go. So I changed the color of his guns so that they're a little bit more solid. I changed his backpack a little more even still, just trying some new things with that, trying to make those binders a little bit larger. And then I changed his skirts. I tried this new concept out where you have these separate pieces that can fold up and down, and I think that's very cool. It's not quite accurate. The side skirts stick forward a little bit too far, but once again, we're sort of going for this more stylized approach, and so I think it's fine. I changed the waist entirely so that it's a lot more solid. It no longer relies on a finicky one-stud connection. However, in order to accomplish that, I did need to sacrifice a little bit of detail right below his neck. He's supposed to have a little extra bit of green right on the collar, and I had that present on the previous design, but it needed to be black so that I can make the rest of his body more solid. The thing is that while that detail is there occasionally in the animation, in the anime, it's not visible on the card. And occasionally in the show, they miscolor it and it ends up being black anyway. So I think correctly it's supposed to be green, but the fact that it's black, I think, doesn't matter too much. It's a detail that can kind of go either way, in my opinion. Now, on the next day, of course, I had to build a Go Yuusha in the same style. I attempted Go Yuusha a couple weeks ago. I tried to make him a much smaller scale. I started with the weapons and then didn't really like where it was going, so I gave up. But after having built a Kaiser that I'm very happy with, of course, I wanted to try applying all of those same design principles to a non-transforming Go Yuusha as well. And so this is what I came up with. And he's very simple and very similar to Kaiser. A lot of the frame is exactly the same. Although he does have minor differences, of course, because he is a different robot. I've made the waist like a little bit longer, so Go Yuusha does end up being a little bit taller than Kaiser, which I think works out just fine. But I'm playing with this art where a lot of the things are similar, but just by adding or taking away a few pieces, I can make it look quite different, so that the two of them match very, very well, but are also very distinct from one another. Like I said, it's a balancing act, and it's actually a whole lot of fun trying to spot those differences. Once again, I don't really know what Go Yuusha's back is supposed to look like. I ended up finding some reference material, but not a whole lot to go off of. Of course, the helmet of Yuusha comes from Go Yuusha's back. That much is clear. Also, this back plate on his skirt armor is the front plate on Yuusha's skirt armor. The thing is that this is Go Yuusha, and from the front, it's visibly blue, so I prioritized the blue color. However, I would imagine that when Go Yuusha flips around, you see a lot more of the details from Yuusha, which means a lot more gold, a lot more white on this back plate, whereas it's just blue here. But I had some green, I added some yellow, so that it gives the impression that there still is something more. Right now, the fins on his back are a little bit small, and I just kind of created a shape sort of similar to Kaiser's backpack and called it good, but I would do a little bit more work to that later on. Here the two of them are together. Once again, I think they look great. And once again, Go Yuusha is just a little bit taller than Kaiser, which I think is perfectly fine because in the lore, in the card details that they added to the website, that they added in magazines, it talks about how Kaiser is kind of this, up and coming rookie. He's the new kid. He's the hot-headed new guy, and Yuusha is the veteran. So I think the fact that he's a little bit taller kind of works for their relationship with each other. Once again, on the next day, I made some changes. I tried to make them even more similar to each other than they were before. So I changed Kaiser's shoulders so that they're a little bit more substantial. I changed some of the details on Go Yuusha's legs. I also changed his hands. You can see they're now red, which is technically less accurate, but I didn't like how long his arms were before, so this is something I'm trying out. He does have like this red band around his wrist, and so I thought that maybe his hands being red was fine because I was kind of cramming two details into one in this case, and I'm not entirely sure if I like it. I'm still kind of on the fence about that one, but I did change his shoulders. Those white details on his shoulders are kind of interesting because in the show and in a lot of the extra animation and alternate card arts, those are black little circles. Those are black details. But on the original card, they're white. And personally, I just think that for the sake of this stylized interpretation of the character, having those white makes them pop a little bit more. It creates symmetry with the details on his lower body, and it creates symmetry with Kaiser. Kaiser has this circular detail in the middle of his chest and these square details on his armor, and then the opposite is true for Go Yuusha. He has this square detail on his chest and these circular details on his armor. It's just little details like that I like to sprinkle into two characters like this that are supposed to stand side by side with each other to create parallels, to make them fit together in the same universe, I guess. Here he is from the back. I was able to find a little bit more source material for what his backpack is supposed to look like. However, there is a little bit of inconsistency there because I can glimpse on the card itself that he has a primarily blue backpack. However, in the show, there is a single frame where Go Yuusha kind of turns around for a second, and you can see this big mass of red covering up the face of what looks a little bit like Yuusha's helmet. I think that detail is a little bit more clear and a little bit more conclusive than what I'm able to see on the card itself. And so I went with that. So like I said, he's got a lot more red on his back now. And I think that his color scheme needed a little bit more red in it anyway. So I'm okay with that. I've changed the V-fin there so that it's a little bit taller and a little bit more pronounced. And then you have more of a crest from Yuusha in the center there. Here is a comparison between Kaiser and Lander. I made some slight modifications to Lander. The thing is that when I originally built these smaller Dimensional Robos, I didn't really intend on keeping them together. It was kind of just a one-off. It was like, hey, I can build this thing from this card game I like, and hey, it's cool. And then I was just gonna take it apart. But like now that I've got a collection of them going, now that I have a Kaiser that I really like the look of and a Go Yuusha that I really like the look of, I'm kind of thinking I want to keep them all together. And I'm kind of thinking I want like an entire clan of them. So I made some polished changes to Lander here, as well as Mariner. I made some changes to his lights on the front and a little bit to the cockpit section. But here is Mariner compared to Go Yuusha. You can kind of see how this would turn into a pair of legs for this guy, the same way that Lander becomes one of his arms in Go Yuusha's super mode. I've already got some ideas for Heart, Kaiser Grader, Dragon, and a few other Dimensional Robos, so I have no idea when this tangent is going to end. I've been pretty collaborative with Starscreamer recently. He actually helped me workshop Go Yuusha this week, and I've even got him interested in tackling some Nova Grappler units as well, so I hope you like Vanguard, because that's the flavor of the month. If you have no idea what it is, I'm sorry, but if you're into card games or tournament anime in general, it's a good time, so go check it out. Special thanks to all of my Patreon supporters, especially my leader class patron, Valraven. Until next time, this has been Rollout, signing off.